Okay, I'm going to try and do 6 reviews in under 10 minutes, even less than that if I can. Okay, first one. This is 10 Seconds from the Sun by Russell Llewellyn Jones, I believe it's pronounced. As I said when I was going to read this, I'm not sure about the name or the cover, and I'm not sure about the book. I think the key thing about first person narrative is if you have a secret that you are withholding from the reader, it feels as though we are purposely being left in the blind, in the dark rather. And this is what's the case is the protagonist, the first person protagonist, has done something truly horrific in his past as a child, but won't tell us what it is. Now he knows, and the story would become very clear if we knew, but we don't. And this is deliberate, and I don't think it works. However, if you're looking for a book with a real menace, claustrophobia, and a sense of kind of deep psychological jeopardy, this is a very, very interesting book. But as I said, I think it's got a structural flaw, and that's that keeping us in the dark, knowingly keeping us in the dark. The next thing. Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter. This is essentially not a novel, not a long poem. It is something in between. And it requires, I've read it twice, and it requires just thinking about what is being said. It is about the death of a mother, and it's about the husband's grieving. He has 2 children, but actually it's about the grieving of an adult. And he is a Ted Hughes scholar, hence the crow metaphor. But the presence of a crow as an alter ego to help you manage the grief works beautifully, but it requires reading it and then pondering it for a long time afterwards. Just taking the journey back into your thoughts, using with the imagery, and then it becomes a very sad and poignant, but somehow redeeming experience. I think that's it. The Notebook by Agatha Christoph. This was written about 20, 30 years ago. It was hugely successful at the time, but hasn't been in print in this country for about 20 years. It is a very good and strong novel. It is about twins in the Second World War who have been left with their grandmother in an occupied country, and it's how the war brutalizes them into almost a kind of brutal morality. They become so hardened to the world, so unsentimental, and they go through a series of exercises to make sure they don't feel pain, they don't feel hunger, they don't feel sentiment. But that doesn't mean that they don't do the right thing, but they do it without. I think, sentiment's the right word. Almost without feeling. It's written in very short sentences with a very clear and unflorid prose. It is actually the first of 3, and I will read the second 2. But it's, in terms of getting a sense of what it might like to be a child in the Second World War, it does something very unique and very special. I recommend it. I recommend it highly. It's a deeply engaging book. Then we have Amos Oz, To Know a Woman. Amos Oz is one of the leading Israeli writers. It's written originally in Hebrew and translated into English, and there's some interesting idiosyncratic moments in the translation. But essentially, it's about a man who loses his wife to a slightly odd accident when he's away. He's in fact a Israeli Secret Service agent, but not in any glamorous way. And he comes back, and it is an incredibly lo-fi commentary on how he comes to terms with his loss and his life, and a relationship with his daughter, which is, and it's a very awkward, sort of unloving relationship. There is love deep down, but it's a very awkward relationship. But in terms of, it really doesn't have any plot or story. It is just a very gentle, nuanced exploration of a man not in touch with his feelings. I really don't like the title, To Know a Woman. And I don't even think it's about that, but it does also has a very interesting metaphor that goes through it. But I enjoyed it, but it requires of us quite a lot in order to engage. It doesn't work hard to engage us. We have to work quite hard to be engaged. Then we have, can't really see it because of the light, Remainder by Tom McCarthy. Staten Island was just shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and his previous book before that, I think, was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. This is his second novel. And it's about a man who's had a head injury, trying to reconstruct memories he can't remember having, but has glimpses of. The idea is a conceit. It is a kind of high concepts notion. And I think for the most part it works, because he goes on then to create memories that he hasn't had for himself, almost. So it's about creating memories he can't remember. And he creates memories by buying buildings and employing actors to live things through over and over again. And then he experiences things and recreates them, and then he recreates things that haven't happened. And it goes, and it sustains that conceit brilliantly, and it's deeply imaginative and very clever. But once again, first-person narrative. Often the voice is very difficult to get right, and this voice doesn't feel right to me all the way through. Some of the sentences are very clunky. It's really hard if your first-person protagonist is not writerly. What do? Do you write just boring prose? Sometimes yes, and if that doesn't work, it's a problem. And sometimes I think here the idea is wonderful, but its execution is not quite convincing in terms of the writing. And then finally we have Morris's List of the Lost. Oh, Morrissey, you surprise us by writing a novel, a very short novel, about a US relay team in 1975. I think kudos for you for writing such an odd, very kind of Updikean subject matter. But I have to say, as much as I wanted to like this, I found it almost unreadable. In fact, I did find it unreadable. I couldn't read it past the midway through. The prose is adolescent. His love of alliteration seems to me that of someone who is just beginning to write and feels that is what good writing is. It has no sense of form. It doesn't. If it's playing with form, it doesn't have the confidence of itself. It is, and I just wish it had been better. But it is essentially the writing is woeful, and it seems to be almost arrogantly unedited, as though he essentially thinks everything he may have worked hard on the sentences. I can't believe he did. But it's as though anything that it comes from the typewriter, pen or laptop was somehow wonderful. And it isn't. It is, as I said, it feels adolescent. I'm not the only person to feel this. I didn't read any reviews until I read it to give it a fair shot. I wish it had been better. I expected it better. It should have been better. He's clearly a man with plenty of talent, and he should have written a novel where style, the métier, the form played to his gifts, but he didn't. And that's 10 minutes.